We've been talking about the backbench worries about these welfare reforms for some months. We've been talking about this rather dramatic amendment to totally derail the bill. If this was to be passed, it would be the end of this legislation for a couple of days. And we're still getting mixed messages, aren't we, from Number 10. We have some people saying we're going to do a change. Prime Minister saying, I'm going to plough on. I mean, what should the government do? They're in a terrible mess.
It is. I mean, it's a real mess, and I've certainly been speaking to sort of lots of, very, very, very upset MPs who are not people who are natural troublemakers. They're very, very supportive of Keir Starmer. They're not from the hard left of the party that you might think be the sort of troublemakers. I mean, I think they've got to try and de-escalate the situation. I mean, ironically, Keir Starmer's doing a lot of good work on the international stage talking about de-escalating things. And I think that should apply with this as well. Personally, I think the government is going to have to give some sort of concession. Otherwise, they will lose this bill, which will be, very difficult, particularly in the week where Labour should be celebrating its first year in power. I don't think these rebels are going to back down. In fact, more people have added their names to this amendment. So I think their options are either to certainly get round the table and do proper discussions. I think Keir Starmer himself needs to speak to people. The other option is to delay things, see if I've heard, could you possibly push this vote sort of later? But Number 10 clearly wants to try and go ahead with this on Tuesday. But unless they make some kind of concession, they will lose this piece of legislation. I think, to be fair to both sides, there are legitimate concerns. I think for a lot of MPs, they're listening to their constituents who are really, really worried about what's coming down the track. On the other hand, the welfare bill is out of control, and I think the government is right to try and think about how to curtail that bill.
Kwasi, it is remarkable that this is a Labour government suggesting a cut to welfare benefits, which their own analysis says is going to put 250,000 more people into poverty, including 50,000 children. And the Labour backbench MPs are saying, how could a Labour government do this? This looks like austerity. It's not within their DNA.
I mean, this is the heart of their problem. But they can see the numbers going up. They're committed to more defence spending.
Yes.
They can see there's a global uncertainty about the economy and people leaving the country, all of that. And they've got to make choices about how they're going to, balance the books. That's what they're thinking.
So they're ploughing into war and taking away from the welfare of the UK.
But in terms of the mixed messages, that's what has really surprised me. Because typically what a government would do is say, look, they'd say what the Prime Minister's saying. We're going to do this thing. And then behind the scenes, they talk to backbenchers and work out, what concessions to give. But to trail that you're going to give concessions 4 days before is very destabilising.
The Times reports, this is Steve Swinford, and the political editor, asked whether he had failed to read the mood of his backbenchers. The Prime Minister hit back. I'm comfortable with reading the room and delivering the change the country needs. I mean, my question is Keir Starmer reading the room? I mean, this is not noises off from a few rebel backbenchers. No. It's the chair of the Treasury Select Committee and the Welfare Select Committee who are all saying we don't trust the government's and the Prime Minister's judgment on the policy or the politics, and they are leading a rebellion to ditch the whole welfare reform bill. I mean, is Keir Starmer able to read the room?
I think one of the issues is that because he's been very, very busy on the international stage, and to be fair to him, there are very big pressing issues going on just this weekend, Iran, Israel, huge issues going on. I think he hasn't been in the room, and I think he needs to do that. I think a lot of MPs
to get into the room.
I think he needs to sit down. Look, when
it's not we've both been the Prime Minister's to be busy.
Well, no, but I think a lot of other people have been, talking to MPs and which understandable, as you say, that is outsourced. But I think this is a crisis now. This is a real big issue within the Labour movement. You know, as I said at the beginning, we're coming up to the first year. And by the way, it's not often that Labour wins power in this country. There's only ever been 7 Labour British prime ministers. So it was a big deal for him to win power, and he and his team did a good job. But they have got to find some way of listening to some of the concerns, because you mentioned that, you know, many people, a lot of women are worried there's going to be disproportionate women affected. This thing about being able to wash below the waist, you know, there are legitimate concerns. There are also legitimate concerns in terms of getting the welfare bill down.
He says it's just noises off. I mean,
but Ed makes the fair point.
It noises off.
No,
he can't read the room. He's in a room where there are 126 of his own MPs
and they're very
screaming at him.
They're very senior people who have very principled objections to what he's trying to do.
I mean, The Guardian says that Labour MPs say he's completely in denial about
So
this.
the problem he has...
It's like winter fuel allowance.
Yes, it's very similar.
They were screaming at him about winter fuel allowance. Publicly, all of the spokespeople from the Labour government were saying, we've got to do it, we were left a terrible situation. Behind the scenes, I imagine they were all saying, what are we doing, taking winter fuel allowance? And eventually they forced
just to say, it's like winter fuel allowance for a different reason as well, which is there is a perfectly good plan to spend some money, to save some money, getting people from incapacity, from welfare benefits into work. What happened was, in the final days before the spring statement, the Office of Budget Responsibility said, no, you are billions short. And at the last minute, the Treasury put in extra welfare reforms, which don't help anybody into work. They take away personal independence payments from people who don't work and are clearly incapacitated and are going to lose loads of money, and poverty is going to rise.
But they're also taking people away from people who do work.
Well, absolutely. But the point is, like the winter allowance, it's not helping people to work. It's we need to make big savings.
That's what's
and
driving.
People then say, well, if you're making big savings, can't you do it a better way?
So that's exactly the problem. And actually, the political problem they have is that there are no good outcomes. Because if they win the vote on Tuesday, the party will be bitterly split, and I think people will be very upset. If they pull the bill, the government's credibility is shot to an extent.
And there's a big hole in the budget.
So either way, they've got themselves into a situation at which there will be, they're not in a good place.
But I think, look, just to focus on the welfare bill, there is a situation where the welfare bill is massively growing. And I do think that the Labour government is right to focus on a big welfare to work programme, as you say. The difficulty is...
That takes time.
And it doesn't save money in the short term.
Yeah.
You know, you can't do both a big welfare to work programme and get immediate savings.
5 billion of savings.
Those savings, I think, will come down the track. And also, if you're the Labour Party, you believe in work and you believe that people should have the right to go to work and be supported. And I believe in that. I think that, I'm sure we all agree with that. I think that's a good thing. But I think it's the fact that people feel this is now being driven by a Treasury spreadsheet rather
Which it
than...
is. I mean, let's face it, that's what's driving it.
That's what happened at the last minute.
That's right.
So somebody now who can't wash below the waist, can't use a toilet on their own, is told you are insufficiently incapacitated to get personal independent payments. And people say, well, how does that be? And those cases, if they carry on with this, those cases are going to be in every Member of Parliament's caseload next year and the year after, after that. And the politics of it is so toxic.
There are a lot of new MPs who are sitting on quite small majorities as well, where the number of people who are getting PIP is very, very, very high.
Well, funny you should say that. Let's reflect on this new YouGov poll, an MRP poll, and it's just come out, and this is what is making everyone nervous, Kwasi. And from the traditional two-party system, those two parties will be nervous. YouGov's central projection, if an election were held today, Labour would win 178 seats, the Conservatives would win 46 seats.
46, that many?
46 seats. No. And Reform would win 271 seats.
Not as bad as Kwasi feared.
Well, look...
Cabinet ministers... Sorry, this is going to come as a shock. Cabinet ministers who would lose their seats under this new poll...
Ed Miliband.
Angela Rayner, Bridget Phillipson, Jonathan Reynolds, Lisa Nandy, John Healey, Pat McFadden and Yvette Cooper.
Yeah, so...
Ed Miliband hangs on.
It doesn't say that he would keep his seat. It just says those are definitely
but
people who would lose under
178
that.
they're projecting is less than half the current number of seats that they have, roughly, about less than half the number of seats they have now. So clearly it'll be a wipeout. But that's the big problem that both the Labour government and the Tories opposition face. It's this reform sort of populist, I would say, insurgency, and plague on both your houses. And this issue on welfare is exactly the kind of thing that will help reform. Because essentially what Labour is saying is, we're going to do these very difficult things. We're essentially harming our base in order to balance the books. And as you said, Aisha, it looks like a Treasury spreadsheet that's driving the policy.
Yeah.
And but it's interesting, though, for Labour to combat reform, do they need to be tougher on welfare spending to get people back to work, or do they need to be more understanding of people on personal independence payments who are going to lose money unfairly?
That's a good question.
I don't think they know the answer to that question.
Well, that's the question everyone's searching for. I don't think Labour should be chasing one party or another. I think Labour has to have a vision and get on with delivering on a domestic level. So I think Labour's going to get attacked on both sides. So we've talked about reform, and I think there will be a narrative, because Redwall MPs were saying to me in the last local elections, as well as winter fuel payment coming up, PIP was coming up on the doorstep as well, in quite traditional Redwall areas. But the narrative they were hearing is, we're having money taken away from us to pay for asylum seekers. That's what the narrative was. So that's the reform narrative. But it's not just the right. The Greens are doing well in areas where Labour have traditionally done well. If Jeremy Corbyn starts up this new sort of movement on the left, there could be an alignment on the left of politics as well who are unhappy with this.
So I think, that's the peril of being in government. When you're in government, you're going to lose votes to every party.
Because you can't do right for doing wrong.
Because anyone who has an objection to the government will choose the party that can harm the government in terms of turfing you out. That's the danger they face.
OK.
And you've got SNP, you've got Greens, you've got Lib Dems, you've got 6 or 7 parties.
But can I just make one point on this? Look, this is a mess. There's no, I'm not denying that. But nobody else does have a kind of a, like, the Tories would go much further on welfare.
Well, we tried to.
No, just let me finish my point. I'm just finishing my point. So the Tories would go much further on welfare. Kemi Badenoch has kind of said she would like to go further. Jeremy Hunt has talked about taking a huge amount. So for people saying, the Labour Party's been mean, if that's what your argument, the Tories would want to be even meaner. I don't know if reform really has a policy on what to do with welfare, apart from taking a vast amount of tax.
So what I find extraordinary...
So there isn't... I know this is everyone, and rightly so, but nobody has another alternative about what to do about the welfare bill.
That isn't the problem, though. The problem is Keir Starmer saying, we're taking the winter fuel allowance away because it's fair and we need the money, and then does a U-turn. Keir Starmer says, I'm taking personal independent payments away from people because it's fair and I need the money. Does another U-turn, and the problem is, people, the next time he says, I'm making this tough decision, people say, well, what happened last time? And the time before?
Although, do people care more about the U-turn or the thing not being done or reversed?
I think they care about leadership.
They care
and
about
whether there's a vision.
If somebody says, run that way, do you run? Or do you think, well, it'll be the other way next?
The final word goes to Kevin. Reform to the welfare bill isn't enough. The changes will mean tens of thousands of people will lose PIP. The vast majority of people receiving this are unable to work because of their disability. Removing PIP doesn't suddenly cure them and make them fit to work. I mean, if they've been given I was going to say that was the final word.
Sorry.
That was the final word.
Right, Saeeda. Let's cross back over to the NATO summit.
Presenting the show.
This was a remarkable moment at NATO when the NATO General Secretary had a remarkable way of describing the president.
Quite embarrassing.
Isn't it?
I mean, I've met Mark Rutte.
So weird.
He's the most
Explain who
moderate...
Mark Rutte is.
Well, he was the Prime Minister of the Netherlands for many, many years, I think for about 10 years. And now he's a Secretary-General of NATO. Yeah. And he's a very balanced, sort of centre-right, measured guy. And for him to call President Trump daddy on television is just extraordinary. I don't know what's got into his head.
Fetishistic.
I feel like the kind of level of global cringe that happened in that moment, everyone was like, ouch, can you feel your actual skin crawl?
If we were on Love Island, we would all be getting the ick.
It's a bit weird.
The terrible thing is, he then tried to explain what he meant. Former Prime Minister of Netherlands is now calling the whole of Europe small children
That's right.
who need a daddy in America to bring them into life.
And the fact
And
that he had to explain it.
pleading with him
No,
not
it's
to leave them behind.
It's embarrassing.
Daddy,
It's
stay
embarrassing.
with
Also,
us.
this guy's the head of NATO, the infantilization of like
it's crazy.
NATO and all
I
of
don't
these.
know what's going
He's
on.
got to get a T-shirt, call me dad. You know what I mean? Everyone was like, this is just so.
He's a
You're in
serious
the whole
guy. I mean,
thinking.
I don't know how, he's probably about 60, late 50s.
Yeah.
He's run his country for 10 years.
Isn't this the guy who
And now he's-
texted
That's
President
right, he
Trump
did.
to say
He did.
congratulations
He did.
on getting everyone to sign up to the 5% and almost wrote it in Trump language?
He did.
And it was described
It's
as
your victory.
That's right.
fawning.
That's right.
And, you know, just
I think
well done, you're going to make us all safer.
He's quite new in the job. And I think someone's told him,
Suck up to Trump.
America funds you,
And they-
so you've got to be very nice to President Trump. And he's internalised
The thing
that.
which is so shocking, Kwasi, you know, your former chancellor, if you were in this situation as Donald Trump and somebody behaved like that,
You'd
I
be
mean, you would
embarrassed
think,
a little
you'd
bit.
think, God, you know, stop
he-
being ridiculous.
I think
Stop-
even Trump
Stop trying to butch, but do you
was
think?
embarrassed.
I'm afraid Trump loves it.
I loves it. But remember,
I think even he realises that was
But
a
Trump
slight
has
embarrassment.
created a global court, particularly after these tariffs and things, where the new world order, the new diplomacy is coming and bending the knee and sucking up to Trump.
That's right.
That is what the new global
You
order
are
is.
a peacemaker.
Yeah, and President Trump is the guy with the big stick. He said, when he was asked about it, he likes me. I think he likes me.
that's what-
If he doesn't, I'll let you know. I'll come back and hit him hard.
Yeah, that's what
All right, let's just, all of us, you know,
He's the Secretary General of NATO. The one thing that he's got is quite a lot of things to hit back with.
I mean, Donald Trump is essentially a 6-year-old. And if you like him, he's nice to you. If you don't like him...
So if he's a daddy at 6...
Oh, God.
what does that make
leave?
everyone else? What does that make everyone
Oh, my God.
let's turn our attention to domestic issues. There is a proposal being floated that we should ban advertising of alcohol in order to save the NHS. Now, there has been, I think, a big move against alcohol in recent years. You know, lots of people, health experts, sort of conflicted about this, but a lot of people think even a little bit of alcohol is bad for you. And we know the cost of too much alcohol. So, you know, in Wes Streeting's NHS 10-year health plan, set to be revealed next week, the government apparently considering restricting advertising of alcohol to bring it in line closer with rules for advertising of unhealthy food. And, of course, there's a ban on tobacco advertising. When we were all growing up,
That's right.
you would see adverts for cigarettes.
right.
And they were actually the coolest adverts, weren't they?
That's right.
But what do you think, Kwasi?
Look, I tend to be more libertarian on this.
How much money comes in through
But a huge,
alcohol
you know,
advertising?
billions. And
alcohol sales.
And the sales. So, you know, as a government, you're trapped between a rock and a hard place. Because on the one hand, you want to improve people's health.
Yes.
So you want people to be less dependent on these kinds of substances. But on the other hand, you're getting huge amounts, as you know, you're getting a lot of duty and taxes from the sale of alcohol and cigarettes. So there is a balance. I think on the whole, people should be treated as adults. But at the same time, and so I don't think banning adverts is necessarily a good idea because people
We
can...
put smoking kills on a
Yes.
packet of cigarettes. There's no safe level of smoking. We don't put drinking kills on a bottle of gin
No,
because there is a safe level of drinking, isn't there? And therefore, and the chief medical officer says there's a certain amount of units it's safe to drink. So the idea that you're going to ban something which we also say is safe and enjoyable. I mean, you know, excessive drinking is bad. Is drinking bad?
I think... Sorry.
Well, I think we are too alcohol dependent in our society. I mean, I've cut back on my drinking a lot recently, and I've really noticed how difficult that is to do. So I went to like a business dinner last night and arrived, and there were so many drinks, and it was a really posh restaurant. And I said, "Have you got anything non-alcoholic?" And she looked at me completely blankly, and they were like,
really? You can make
"Would you
that
like some
choice.
rosé?" And I was like, "No, no, hang on." And then it was like a really, and then I just. And they were like, "Oh, is it for religious reasons?" I said, "No, I'm getting up I'm doing Good Morning Britain in the morning. I want to have a clear head and I need to..." And I thought that was just such an interesting kind of reveal in quite a nice, posh restaurant. They've not even made any... They said, we got water. And I thought, come on, that's just not... So I think, look, I don't want to be puritanical about this, but I do think...
But you are being puritanical.
No, I just think we have cut back on a lot of our advertising on junk food and things. I think that is the right thing to do.
Yeah.
So I would be... We have a culture and a sort of... Advertising shapes culture as well, where basically you are kind of told that everything has to be done with a drink, and I don't think that's
Quasi
right.
alcohol.
The World Health Organization, I'm told, says there is no safe level of drinking.
Yeah,
I
that's
personally
exactly
think this is ridiculous, but then what do I know?
But that's
right?
what's going to come. They've said that about
I mean, if you're now a health guru now, I think it's in moderation. But I think for a lot of us, we don't drink. I mean, look. If you go into Parliament and you see the amount of drinking that goes on, I don't think that is very healthy. I don't think that's very healthy for individuals.
What do you do about that? Do you legislate for it? Do you ban advertising?
I think you have to do it. It's basically the same way we have got... Look at our health problem. Look at a lot of our problem with people not going to work. We've got a massive problem with unhealthiness in this country.
I agree.
And we are going to have to deal with it, whether it's diabetes, whether it's alcoholism, whether it's addiction. Now, there's different ways of doing it. I wouldn't be as draconian as to ban everything. But where you can do nudges to move people in that direction, it's better for them, better for the economy, better for the health service.
Are smoking and drinking going to become equivalent in the way in which...
I think I can see a world where they are. I can see a world where, not now, but in 10, 20 years, people would be more draconian and puritanical about it. Because society changes. I mean, you hear anecdotally that the younger generation, Gen Zs, they don't drink as much as, people like us did in the 90s. When we were... Well, I don't know about you, but when we were at university and all the rest of it. Our generation, statistically, is shown to have drunk more when we were in our 20s and 30s than the current generation.
Alcohol-related issues cost £5 billion to the NHS. But there is also, that includes hospital admissions, ambulance call-outs. There's also £14 billion of crime and disorder blamed on alcohol, £5 billion to the wider economy due to missing work, and £2.8 billion to social services. So nationally, just in England, £27 billion a year.
But before we go down this
driving accidents have a massive...
That's true, but we've seen this before. I mean, the Americans tried this 100 years ago. They had very similar arguments, and they decided to essentially ban alcohol. And that had a terrible unintended consequences because you basically gave rise to the mafia who sold it all illegally.
About banning alcohol.
No,
this is just curbing some of the advertising.
We're just having a
in a
broad
way,
conversation.
Maybe it would be more sensible to ban, or restrict alcohol than the advertising. But we're debating that a bit later. Also part of the plan, apparently, is that we should all be using... There's going to be an update to the NHS app, and they're going to put a AI GP...
Oh, God.
That's good.
On your... Right, OK, that split you both. You went, oh, God.
No.
And Kwasi, you went, that's good.
I think it's good. It's modern technology. And we should be harnessing technology to get better outcomes. So I don't see what the problem is with that.
Do you use ChatGPT to diagnose problems?
Well, I'm not a medic, but I use it in day-to-day life.
Did you use it for the mini-budget?
They didn't exist then.
Now who's acting childishly?
You're such a wit.
So,
it's just like being in the playground with you.
Someone's got to be Daddy. Who's going to be
We need Daddy to intervene, Ed.
Well, you're going to be Daddy.
Let the kids fight it out.
I always thought you as a sort of father figure.
Oh, God, don't say that.
I'll have to put into ChatGPT how we sort out conflict.
No, but I mean, I think it's serious, this, and I'm with Aisha. If you put your symptoms into your AI GP and the AI GP says, don't worry, Kwasi, you're fine. I mean, do you think I'm fine?
No, but doctors.
And if it turns out you aren't, I know, but
real doctors do that anyway.
But doctors do that because they are seeing you and talking to you. It's not some algorithm chat.
I think that people use the internet to find out what's wrong with them.
That's not the same as an NHS.
The whole time.
I tell you what it will say. Do you know what it will say? It will say, I've not got sufficient information, go to A&E.
Well, at least it says that. At least it's gone through a screen.
It would increase burdens on the NHS?
It's not a proper triage. It's not a proper way of triage.
Before you go, I have here the new Marks and Spencer's... I thought this was a prank yesterday. Marks and Spencer's strawberry and cream sandwiches.
Oh, my gosh, not for me.
I mean...
Unhealthy. I should be...
There must be so much sugar.
You love a cream cake.
I know. The
Ed,
WHO...
I've seen your Instagram.
The WHO says cream is never good for you.
Let's do a taste test.
Oh,
Aisha, there we go.
Goodness.
There's strawberry and cream. sandwich for you. And Ed, let's tear this open. There we go. Do you want to try?
We're all going to try it at the same time.
Suzanne, I think you've got to try one as well. There we go. Okay, ready?
Okay,
3, 2, 1.
It's actually with
Do you
cream
know,
cheese rather than with
I really don't want to. It looks absolutely disgusting.
No.
Oh, I am.
It's a bit too sweet for me.
Oh my God, it's minging. Sorry, it's minging.
Oh, no.
The bread and strawberry thing doesn't work.
Strawberries are not. The bread is not nice.
I'd have rather had a gin and tonic.
You'll get banned for saying that.
That's right.
I have to say, I think that's absolutely delicious.
Although, having said it's disgusting, I'm going...
Can I put it on
exactly.
I've had enough.
This is terrible in such small portions.
I rather like that.
It's the nanny state gone mad.
Thank you both very much indeed. There will be savoury snacks available for you in the green room.
Thanks.
It's so early in the morning, we're so hungry. Anyway. Still to come. I don't think we can do it, can we? I know. It's unreadable.